Faith leaders gathered here today, together with the scientists, are united in reminding us that addressing climate change is an urgent moral imperative. Caring for the planet and caring for those who suffer from climate impacts, especially the poor and most vulnerable, is a moral responsibility.
Science and religion have not always been at odds. There was a time when all science was conducted by members of the clergy because they were some of the most highly educated people at the time. Once again, the stars have aligned. The Pope agrees with the majority of scientists that the effects of climate change are exacerbated by man's actions. And who are we to question the man who speaks for God? Let's get to the hardline. Our guest is Director of Communications at the Heartland Institute, the person who coordinated a trip to Rome with a group of scientists and policy experts to attempt to sway the pontiff from throwing the Vatican in with the United Nations on climate policy. Jim Blakely joins us. Jim, thanks so much for being here.
Happy to be here, Ed.
Jim, I guess that's the main question people want to ask, because all of a sudden there's this furor about the Pope getting involved in climate change. What is so wrong with a man of God trying to save the planet?
There's nothing wrong with the man of God trying to save the planet. In fact, he's in the business of saving the souls of humanity, and so that's a good thing. The trouble here is, although Pope Francis is a Jesuit and he's a learned man, I believe he has his degree, a science degree, either biology or chemistry, but the reason the Heartland Institute brought a contingent of scientists and policy experts to the Vatican last week was to warn the Pope against the danger of throwing in with the United Nations on climate change, because the United Nations is not telling the entire truth about what's happening to our planet.
So what you're really saying, though, to the Pope is, if you were to give the Pope a message, is don't throw in entirely with the United Nations, Your Holiness. They don't have it all right. You're not saying blow away everything the UN says, are you?
Most of it. The trouble is the United Nations, they have based their future policies, or what they see as the right policies, especially on energy policy, for the world, based on climate models, computer modeling that is not proven accurate. The fact is, the Earth has not warmed for 18 years and 4 months straight, as measured with satellite measurements. And so, yet all of the United Nations climate models, computer models, have shown that we should have been warmer by now. In fact, because CO2 is going up like this, but the temperature of the planet is flat.
Just in case while we're sitting here talking right now, I think that might be the Pope himself calling to actually say something to you about coming over to Rome and telling him, look, is the bottom line with this that your institute and others are simply trying to tell the pontiff, look, this is such a political football here in America. You have so many people who are looking at this from only a Democratic side and some from only a Republican side. Are you not just trying to tell him to look at all the evidence before you throw in and basically, in many ways, anger a lot of Catholics in America?
Well, exactly. And the Pope is not going to get the full picture of what is actually happening to the climate from the United Nations, because they have an agenda. They're not really a scientific organization. They're a political organization. And they're using global warming, the idea that man is causing a catastrophe of the Earth, to set global policy on energy, on population control, on all sorts of different aspects of our lives. And the Pope should not be putting his moral authority, which is obviously immense, behind the United Nations. That's not where it belongs. He needs to understand the full science, and to get that, that's why we went to Rome to communicate as best we could that the science is not settled and that the United Nations is not the final word on what is happening to the climate. The data is the final word on what is happening to the climate.
I got about 90 seconds left here, Jim.
Catastrophe.
What did you get from the Pope then, or what was the message that came forward to you from Rome? Is he willing to at least sit back and look at everything, or is he just going head-on bull in a china shop with what he feels is right now?
I think he's going full-on bull in a china shop with what he feels right now. My understanding was that pretty much the entire event in Rome last Tuesday was kind of a dog and pony show, that this was already established, the encyclical is pretty much already written, and that the Pope has made up his mind. We are hopeful that because of our presence in Rome, which was covered by the press, and he knows we were there, that maybe now he will rethink putting his moral authority behind the United Nations, and we'll see that in the coming weeks and months ahead.
45 seconds then. Is it your belief that if the pontiff goes ahead with this encyclical, that he will be creating a rift with Catholic conservatives in America that he simply won't be able to repair?
I don't know if he wouldn't be able to repair it, but it's definitely going to be a rift with conservative Catholics in the United States, because a lot of what the United Nations is asking for is population control, which of course means contraception, which is not part of Catholic teaching. And so, again, it's very dangerous for the Pope to take all this science at face value and put his moral authority behind the United Nations, because the agenda that he should have and the historic agenda of the Catholic Church and the United Nations are not a very good match.
I got about 15 seconds. Do you think maybe the Pope just might be baiting people a little bit just to see where everybody is at this point?
That would be interesting. That would certainly be a new thing for any Pope, and Pope Francis for sure. But again, we're hopeful that the Pope will understand and now has exposure to what the data actually says is happening to the climate, and that it does not justify him putting his moral authority behind the United Nations agenda when it comes to the climate, and basically their agenda as it comes to running the lives of everybody on Earth.
You indicated it yourself. This is a different Pope and a different time. Jim Lakely from the Heartland Institute, thanks so much for joining us, Jim.
Happy to be here.
Stay with us. The fastest 60 minutes in news talk. The Hard Line continues.